The History of Nintendo, a Bedtime Story Introduction. Hello there, and welcome. Tonight, let's take a relaxing journey through the history of Nintendo, the company behind so many of our favorite games. If you want to hear more videos like this, please like, subscribe, and leave what topic you would like to hear next in the comments. In this gentle bedtime story, we'll travel back over a century, from Nintendo's humble beginnings to the consoles and characters loved by millions today. Nintendo has created countless beloved franchises, from Mario and Donkey Kong to The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Pokémon, Animal Crossing, and more. Names that have become famous in homes all around the world. So fluff up your pillow, settle in comfortably, and let your mind drift as we explore how a small card-making company grew into a magical world of video games. Let's begin our story of Nintendo. From playing cards to toys, the early years 1889 to 1970. Our story begins in the late 19th century in Japan. In the year 1889, a craftsman named Fusajiro Yamauchi founded a little company called Nintendo in the city of Kyoto. At that time, Nintendo didn't make video games. Those didn't exist yet. Instead, Yamauchi's company made beautiful, handmade playing cards known as Hanafuda, which means flower cards. These cards were small and ornate, painted with bright flowers and seasonal imagery. They became very popular in Japan, bringing smiles to people who played traditional card games with them. For many decades, Nintendo was mainly a playing card company. They even struck a deal with Disney in the 1950s to put Disney characters on their cards, which helped them sell hundreds of thousands of card decks to families. But by the 1960s, Nintendo's president at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, the founder's grandson, realized that the playing card business might not grow forever. He wanted to try new things to entertain people. So Nintendo experimented with all sorts of ideas, from running a taxi service to making instant rice. Most of those ventures didn't work out, but one area showed great promise: toys and games. In 1965, Nintendo hired a creative engineer named Gunpei Yokoi to work in their factory. Yokoi had a talent for inventing fun gadgets. One day, Yamauchi saw Yokoi playing with a simple, extendable grabber arm he had made for his own amusement. Yamauchi was impressed and asked him to develop it into a product. The result was the Ultra Hand, a mechanical arm toy that could grab things from the distance. When it was released in 1966, the Ultra Hand became a surprise hit, selling hundreds of thousands of units. This success showed Nintendo that making toys and games could be a big part of their future. Over the next few years, Yokoi and Nintendo created other toys, like a love tester and remote-controlled cars, building up Nintendo's reputation for fun, innovative playthings. By the late 1960s, Nintendo had grown its games department and even built a new production plant to make toys and games. The company was ready to explore the exciting new world of electronic entertainment. Little did they know, they were on the verge of entering a whole new industry, video games, that would transform Nintendo forever. Stepping into video games, 1970s. The 1970s arrived, bringing new technology and new possibilities. Nintendo began to blend its toy-making creativity with electronics to craft novel entertainment products. In 1970, Nintendo released a series of light gun toys called the Beam Gun series. ray gun toys that used light sensors to hit targets. This was one of the first times electronic technology was used in toys in Japan, and it was very popular. A few years later, in 1973, Nintendo developed a laser clay shooting system, which used laser light to let people shoot at moving targets in an indoor game, like a high-tech version of clay pigeon shooting. It became a hit in Japan, almost as popular as going bowling. These inventions showed Nintendo's knack for combining technology with play in a creative way. Around this time, a new form of entertainment was emerging worldwide: video games. Arcade video games, like Pong, were starting to capture people's imaginations. Nintendo did not want to be left behind. They began creating their own coin-operated arcade games, and also looked at making games that could be played at home on a TV. In 1975, Nintendo worked with Mitsubishi Electric to develop an early video game system using an electronic video recorder, EVR player. And by 1977, Nintendo released its first dedicated home video game consoles in Japan, called the Color TV Game 6 and Color TV Game 15. These were simple machines that came with built-in games. The number in their names tells you how many games each had. The games were basic, often variations of Pong, but for the time, it was magical to hook up a Nintendo device to your television and play games at home. Nintendo was also getting involved in arcade games overseas. In 1979, Nintendo's president, Hiroshi Yamauchi, sent his son-in-law, Minoru Arakawa, to the United States to establish Nintendo of America. This was a bold step aimed at bringing Nintendo's games to the Western world. Nintendo of America started small, testing Nintendo's arcade machines in bars and game centers. At first, they had some struggles. One early arcade game, called Radar Scope, didn't perform well in the US, and Nintendo had a lot of unsold arcade units. But they soon would have a breakthrough, thanks to a young designer at Nintendo named Shigeru Miyamoto. In 1980, Nintendo created a handheld electronic game series called Game & Watch. These were little devices with LCD screens, the first portable games Nintendo ever made. Each Game & Watch device played one simple game, like catching falling objects or juggling, and even had a clock, hence watch. They were a big hit, introducing the idea that gaming could be done on the go. The stage was set for Nintendo to truly make its mark in video games, both in arcades and eventually in our living rooms. The Arcade Donkey and the Birth of Mario, 1981. One of Nintendo's first major video game successes came in 1981 with the creation of an arcade game about a giant ape. Back in 1980, Nintendo was sitting on those unsold Radar Scope arcade cabinets and needed a new game to convert them into. Shigeru Miyamoto was tasked with designing this new game, even though he was a young artist with little programming experience. The game he came up with was Donkey Kong, a playful story of a big gorilla, a brave little hero, and a damsel in distress. In this game, the gorilla, Donkey Kong, has kidnapped a young woman, and a character originally known as Jumpman must climb ladders and leap over barrels to rescue her. When Donkey Kong hit arcades in 1981, it became a massive hit, especially in North America. Players loved its fun characters and the challenging jumping gameplay. The little hero Jumpman quickly became popular. He was a short, mustachioed man in overalls, a design inspired by a carpenter. As Nintendo of America set up its new warehouse near Seattle, an amusing story unfolded. Their warehouse landlord was named Mario Segale, and he somewhat resembled the character. In a bit of lighthearted tribute, Nintendo began calling the Jumpman character Mario after their landlord. The name stuck, and Mario would soon become Nintendo's most famous character, the mascot of the company and an icon of gaming. The lady Mario was rescuing in Donkey Kong was later named Pauline. Donkey Kong not only gave Nintendo a hit game, it also birthed a legend. With Mario and Donkey Kong now part of the family, Nintendo had a cast of characters that players adored. This success gave Nintendo of America a much-needed boost and proved that Nintendo could dream up games that captivated the world. Enter the Nintendo Entertainment System, mid-1980s. As the 1980s continued, Nintendo set its sights on conquering home gaming. At this time, there was a downturn in the video game industry in the United States. In 1983, the market became flooded with poor quality games, and many companies went out of business. This was later known as the video game crash of 1983, and many people thought home video games might just be a passing fad. But Nintendo had a plan to bring gaming back to life in the West. In Japan, Nintendo had been developing a new 8-bit family computer system. They released this console in Japan in 1983, where it was called the Family Computer, or Famicom for short. It was a small red and white box that played games stored on interchangeable cartridges. A big change from the single-game machines like the color TV game. The Famicom was a hit in Japan, thanks to games like Donkey Kong and a port of the arcade classic Mario Bros. Encouraged by this success, Nintendo prepared to bring the system to North America and Europe, but they knew they had to do it carefully because of the recent market crash. In 1985, Nintendo released the console in the United States under a new name, the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES. They avoided calling it just a video game console to differentiate it from the failed systems of a few years before. The NES even came packaged with a toy robot accessory, ROB, and a light gun in some bundles to make it seem more like an interactive toy than just a game console. The strategy worked. When the NES launched, it slowly but surely won over American gamers and retailers. By 1986, the NES had launched across Europe as well, becoming an instant hit and a must-have in homes around the world. What made the NES so special were the games. Nintendo, along with talented designers like Shigeru Miyamoto, introduced one masterpiece after another on this system. In 1985, they released Super Mario Bros. On the NES, a game that came packed with the console in many regions. This game let players control Mario on an epic adventure through the Mushroom Kingdom, jumping on Goombas and throwing fireballs to rescue Princess Toadstool, Peach. Super Mario Bros. Became a smash hit worldwide, defining the platforming genre. Children everywhere were humming its cheerful theme song and dreaming of finding secret pipes and hidden blocks. In fact, studies at the time showed that kids were as familiar with Mario as they were with Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny. That's how iconic Mario had become by the late 1980s. Following Mario's success, Nintendo kept the hits coming. In 1986, they published The Legend of Zelda on the NES. This game, created by Miyamoto and his colleague Takashi Tezuka, let players explore a vast fantasy world as a brave hero named Link, collecting tools and treasures to save the kingdom of Hyrule. It was one of the first console games that let you save your progress, thanks to a tiny battery inside the game cartridge, a revolutionary idea at the time. Another notable game series born on the NES was Metroid, 1986, a sci-fi adventure starring a lone bounty hunter, Samus Aran, exploring alien planets. Nintendo also thrilled players with sports and puzzle titles like Punch-Out and Tetris, and even educational games. By 1988, the NES library had grown to dozens of titles, attracting not just kids, but also older gamers and families. The NES single-handedly revitalized the home gaming industry. Over its lifetime, the NES sold over 60 million units worldwide and firmly established Nintendo as the leader in video games in the 1980s. As the decade neared its end, Nintendo had one more surprise that would take gaming on the go, a device that would fit in your pocket and change the world of portable play. Game Boy and the rise of handheld gaming, late 1980s. In 1989, Nintendo introduced a little gray handheld that would become a global phenomenon, the Game Boy. The Game Boy was the first portable handheld game system with interchangeable game cartridges, meaning you could swap out games and play many different adventures on one device. It had a small greenish monochrome screen, not in color, but sharp enough to see the action, and was sturdy and simple to use. The very first Game Boy came bundled with a game called Tetris, a famous puzzle game about fitting falling blocks together. The combination was irresistible. People of all ages became hooked on stacking those Tetris blocks, whether on the bus, at home, or during school recess. Thanks to Game Boy, portable gaming became wildly popular. When Game Boy launched in North America and Europe shortly after its debut in Japan, it flew off the shelves and was hard to find in stores for months. One reason the Game Boy succeeded was its excellent battery life and durability. You could play for hours with the help of 4 AA batteries, and even if you dropped it, it often survived. Many kids carried a Game Boy everywhere, hooked on games like Tetris, Super Mario Land, and later Kirby's Dream Land and Metroid 2. By the end of the 1990s, the Game Boy and its later variations would go on to sell over 100 million units worldwide, making it the most popular game system of its time. It's astonishing to think that this humble device brought so much joy and introduced the concept of gaming anytime and anywhere. The Game Boy also laid the groundwork for one of Nintendo's most successful franchises ever, Pokémon. In the mid-1990s, Nintendo worked with a small team at Game Freak to produce a role-playing game about collecting cute monster creatures. This game, Pokémon Red and Green, was released in Japan for the Game Boy in 1996. We'll soon hear how Pokémon became a worldwide craze. But first, let's look at what Nintendo was doing on the home console front in the early 1990s. The 16-bit era, Super Nintendo, early 1990s. By 1990, technology had advanced, and gamers were ready for the next generation of consoles with better graphics and sound. Nintendo answered with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES, which launched in Japan in late 1990 as the Super Famicom, and in North America in 1991, reaching Europe by 1992. The Super Nintendo was a 16-bit console, a big step up from the 8-bit NES, allowing for more detailed visuals, richer music, and more complex games. The console looked sleek with its gray casing, or a playful white, red, and yellow design in Japan, and had a comfortable controller with rounded edges and 4 colorful face buttons. The SNES went on to sell over 46 million units worldwide, making it another successful chapter for Nintendo. With the SNES, Nintendo continued its string of legendary games. One of the early hits was Super Mario World, 1990, which introduced Mario's friendly dinosaur companion Yoshi, delighting players with vibrant colors and imaginative levels. In 1991, Nintendo released The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, a much-anticipated sequel that expanded the Zelda saga with an even richer story and a parallel dark world to explore. Fans and critics loved it. It felt like an interactive fairy tale with secrets around every corner. Nintendo also introduced new franchises on the SNES, such as Star Fox, a space shooter featuring animal pilots, which used a special Super FX chip to render 3D graphics, and F-Zero, a futuristic racing game that felt incredibly fast and smooth. The mid-90s also brought one of the most visually impressive games on the SNES, Donkey Kong Country, 1994. This game was developed with Rare, a British studio, and it used advanced computer-modeled graphics, ACM, to create a beautiful, pre-rendered 3D look. Donkey Kong Country's graphics and fun gameplay, starring Donkey Kong's nimble nephew, Diddy Kong, captured players' hearts during the holiday season of 1994. It proved the SNES could still wow players, even as other companies were starting to move towards true 3D gaming. It's worth noting that during the early 90s, Nintendo faced its first real competitor in the console space, Sega. Sega's Genesis, or Mega Drive, console was a popular alternative, and Sega famously marketed itself as the cooler, edgier brand in contrast to family-friendly Nintendo. This rivalry, sometimes called the Console Wars, pushed Nintendo to step up its game, but also gave players 2 different systems to enjoy. Sega had Sonic the Hedgehog as a mascot, but Nintendo had Mario, and many kids in the early 90s were either Team Mario or Team Sonic. Despite the fierce competition, Nintendo maintained its leadership in 16-bit games, and by the mid-90s, the SNES was still going strong with a huge library of beloved titles. Nintendo was also exploring new hardware ideas. In 1995, they tried something quite ambitious and ahead of its time, a device called the Virtual Boy. This was a red, goggle-like tabletop console that displayed games in 3D through a visor you looked into, a bit like a VR headset. It showed graphics in black and red stereoscopic visuals. Nintendo hoped it would introduce a new kind of immersive gaming. However, the Virtual Boy didn't do well. It was heavy, the visuals were only in one color, and it wasn't comfortable to use for long. It ended up being a rare misstep for Nintendo. The Virtual Boy was discontinued not long after its launch and is remembered as a commercial failure. But Nintendo learned valuable lessons from this experiment about what players wanted and didn't want in a gaming experience. Meanwhile, something was brewing on the Game Boy that would soon explode in popularity. In February 1996, Nintendo released Pokémon in Japan under the original title Pocket Monsters. The Game Boy was by then a long-established system, but Pokémon invigorated it anew. Players could wander a fantasy world catching cute, wild creatures like Pikachu, Charmander, and many more. Train them and battle with friends. The concept of collecting and trading Pokémon with your friends using the Game Boy's link cable was enormously appealing. The games became a phenomenon in Japan, and Nintendo realized they had a potential worldwide hit on their hands. We'll catch up with Pokémon in a moment, but first, Nintendo was about to take a leap into true 3D gaming on home consoles. A new dimension, Nintendo 64 and Pokémon Mania, late 1990s. In 1996, Nintendo launched its next major home console, the Nintendo 64, often abbreviated N64. This system was a 64-bit console, a big technical leap, and it brought Nintendo fully into the world of 3D graphics. In Japan, the N64's debut in June 1996 was met with enormous enthusiasm. More than 500,000 systems were sold on the first day, as eager fans lined up to experience the future of gaming. The N64 reached North America and Europe a few months later, and it quickly became the must-have machine for playing in the new 3D worlds. One of the key reasons for the N64's success was its stellar launch title, Super Mario 64. Designed by Shigeru Miyamoto, this game took the beloved Mario into a fully 3D realm for the first time. Players could run, jump, and explore an open 3D environment, leaping through magical paintings into different worlds. The sense of freedom and wonder Super Mario 64 gave was unprecedented. Many considered it the greatest video game of all time for how it redefined what games could be. The N64 controller even featured a revolutionary analog stick, which allowed for precise 360-degree control of Mario's movement, and a trigger button on the back that felt like an extension of your hand. This controller set the standard for 3D game controls in the industry. Another groundbreaking title on N64 was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, released in 1998. This game transformed the Zelda series into a 3D epic. Players guided Link through the expansive kingdom of Hyrule in 3D, solving puzzles and delving into dungeons. Ocarina of Time was filled with emotional music, clever gameplay, and a vast world that made players truly feel like the hero of a legend. It set new standards for action-adventure games and broke pre-order sales records at the time. To this day, it's often regarded as one of the best games ever made. The N64 era also gave us other classics like Mario Kart 64, bringing friends and family together for chaotic racing. Star Fox 64, with cinematic space battles and the introduction of memorable rumbling explosions using the Rumble Pack, and GoldenEye 007, a James Bond game that became wildly popular for its split-screen multiplayer matches. Speaking of controllers, Nintendo introduced the Rumble Pack in 1997 for the N64, an accessory that could be plugged into the controller to make it vibrate during games. Feeling the controller shake when your car crashed in a game, or when your character took a hit, added a new layer of immersion. This idea of force feedback in controllers soon became a standard feature across the industry. Now, while the N64 was dazzling players with 3D adventures, the late 90s also saw Pokémon burst onto the global scene. After its success in Japan, Nintendo brought Pokémon to the West. In 1998, Pokémon Red and Blue were released in North America and Europe on the Game Boy. Almost overnight, Pokémon became a worldwide craze. Kids were watching the Pokémon cartoon on TV, trading Pokémon cards at recess, and of course, playing the Game Boy games obsessively to catch all 150 creatures. By October 1999, the Pokémon games had launched across Europe as well, accompanied by fun spin-off titles like Pokémon Snap, where you take photos of Pokémon, and Pokémon Pinball, a pinball game cartridge that even included a rumble feature. The adorable Pikachu and his friends were everywhere, on backpacks, lunchboxes, and even the big screen with the first Pokémon movies. The Pokémon franchise, partially owned by Nintendo, became one of the most successful entertainment properties in history, and it all started on Nintendo's humble Game Boy. Back on the home console front, the N64 era was exciting, but Nintendo faced new competition. In the mid-90s, Sony had entered the gaming world with the PlayStation, a CD-based console. Many game developers were moving to CD-ROM technology for the greater storage it offered. Nintendo, however, chose to stick with cartridges for the N64, prioritizing fast load times and reliability. Though cartridges had less capacity and were more expensive to produce than CDs. This decision meant some third-party game companies moved their projects to other platforms. As a result, while the N64 was loved by millions and had some of history's greatest games, its overall library was smaller compared to Sony's PlayStation, and the N64 ultimately sold fewer units. By the end of the 1990s, the N64 sold around 33 million systems, whereas Sony's PlayStation surpassed 90 million. It was a rare moment where Nintendo wasn't the top seller in consoles. Nonetheless, Nintendo learned from this experience and quietly started planning its next moves, both in the home console space and in portables. In late 1998, Nintendo gave the Game Boy a modest upgrade with the Game Boy Color, which, as the name suggests, could display games in color. Children could now see their Pokémon in color on the handheld, and new games like Pokémon Gold and Silver took advantage of the richer palette. The Game Boy Color kept the handheld line strong as the world moved toward the new millennium. New challenges. GameCube and Game Boy Advance 2000s. As the year 2000 arrived, Nintendo was riding high on the Pokémon wave and preparing new hardware. In 2001, Nintendo launched two new systems that marked the next chapter: the Game Boy Advance and the Nintendo GameCube. The Game Boy Advance, GBA, came first, releasing in Japan in March 2001 and in the West that summer. The GBA was like a supercharged Game Boy. It had a 32-bit processor, comparable in power to the Super Nintendo, and a bright, colorful screen. This handheld let players enjoy games that were closer to home console quality on the go. It launched with titles like Super Mario Advance, a remake of the classic Mario Bros. 2, and F-Zero Maximum Velocity, showing off fast, smooth graphics in the palm of your hand. The Game Boy Advance was an instant success in Europe. It set a record by selling 500,000 units in its first week on sale. Gamers were excited to have portable versions of series like The Legend of Zelda, Mario Kart, and Metroid, which got a fantastic GBA entry, Metroid Fusion. Over the next few years, the GBA would sell tens of millions of units. By the end of 2002, more than 25 million Game Boy Advance systems were already in homes around the world, continuing Nintendo's dominance of the handheld market. Later in 2001, Nintendo released its new home console, the Nintendo GameCube. The GameCube was a bold departure in design. It was a compact, cube-shaped box with a built-in handle, coming in fun colors like indigo, purple, and jet black. Instead of cartridges, Nintendo finally moved to disc media for this console, using small 3-inch optical discs. The GameCube launched in September 2001 in Japan and November 2001 in North America, followed by Europe in May 2002. Many were excited by its lineup of games. At launch, it featured Luigi's Mansion, starring Mario's brother, in a comical ghost hunting adventure, as well as Super Smash Bros. Melee, a fighting game that brought together dozens of Nintendo characters in a frantic party brawl. This game quickly became a fan favorite and a staple of multiplayer gatherings. Though the GameCube was powerful and had many excellent games, it faced extremely tough competition. Sony's PlayStation 2 had launched a year earlier and was breaking records in sales. And Microsoft entered the console arena for the first time with its Xbox in late 2001. Compared to these, the GameCube ended up in third place in terms of sales. It appealed strongly to loyal Nintendo fans, but it did not capture as large an audience as the PlayStation 2 did. The GameCube sold roughly 22 million units over its life, far behind the PS2's 155 million. Nintendo also found that third-party support, games made by outside developers, was weaker on GameCube. Many teen and adult-oriented games stayed on PlayStation or Xbox. Nintendo, while still profitable, was facing some challenges during this period. However, there were still plenty of bright spots for the GameCube. It was home to some fantastic and innovative games. The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, 2002, presented Link's world in a gorgeous cartoon-like art style. Metroid Prime, 2002, successfully brought the Metroid series into a 3D first-person perspective, offering immersive exploration. Animal Crossing, 2001 in Japan, 2002 internationally, offered a relaxing, real-time life simulation in a village of charming animal neighbors. And Pikmin, 2001, was a completely new creation by Shigeru Miyamoto about guiding tiny plant-like creatures to collect objects. This game introduced the Pikmin franchise, adding yet another unique series to Nintendo's roster. Despite its smaller market share, a GameCube era showed that Nintendo's creative spirit was alive and well. In 2002, a significant change in Nintendo's leadership took place. Hiroshi Yamauchi, who had run the company since 1949 and overseen Nintendo's transformation from a card maker to a video game giant, decided to retire after more than 50 years at the helm. He appointed a new president, Satoru Iwata, who took over Nintendo's leadership in May 2002. Iwata was notable for being a hands-on game developer himself. Earlier in his career, he had worked on games like Earthbound and the Kirby series, and he had a strong understanding of what made games fun. Under Iwata's leadership, Nintendo would soon embark on a new strategy to expand the world of gaming to an even broader audience. Expanding the audience, Nintendo DS and Wii, 2004 to 2006. By the mid-2000s, Nintendo was preparing to surprise the world with not just one, but two innovative pieces of hardware. The first was a new handheld system, and the second was a home console that would change how people play together. In 2004, Nintendo unveiled a mysterious new handheld, initially codenamed Project DS. This turned out to be the Nintendo DS, a unique dual-screened portable console. The DS looked like a clamshell that opened to reveal two screens, one on top of the other. The bottom screen was a touchscreen, which meant you could tap and draw on it with a stylus or your finger, introducing entirely new ways to play. Some people were skeptical at first. It was a bold design, quite different from the single-screen Game Boy line. But when the Nintendo DS launched, in late 2004 in the US and Japan, and March 2005 in Europe, it quickly became a smash hit. Gamers realized the touchscreen and dual screens allowed for fresh gameplay experiences. Nintendo was keen to use the DS to reach people who had never played games before, in addition to longtime gamers. They created a line of software called Touch Generations, which included titles that felt more like fun, everyday activities. For example, Nintendogs 2005 let players raise and train virtual puppies by calling to them and petting them on the touchscreen, a game many non-traditional gamers, including parents and grandparents, found adorable. Brain Age, Dr. Kawashima's brain training turned simple math and memory exercises into a daily game, and it became a huge hit among adults who had never played video games before. Of course, the DS also got entries in beloved franchises. New Super Mario Bros. Brought classic side-scrolling Mario gameplay to a new generation. Mario Kart DS allowed multiplayer kart racing online, and Animal Crossing Wild World let players use the handheld to build a cozy town and even visit friends' towns via the internet. This title became a bestseller, attracting players young and old into the peaceful world of Animal Crossing. With these games, the Nintendo DS became the most popular portable system of its era. By 2009, Nintendo had shipped over 100 million Nintendo DS systems worldwide, an astonishing figure. While the DS was booming, Nintendo was simultaneously working on a new home console under the codename Revolution. And a revolution it was. When Nintendo formally introduced the Wii console in 2006, it showed the world a completely new way to play games. The Wii, pronounced Wii, was a small, sleek white box, but its most important feature was the Wii Remote, a wireless controller that you could point at the screen and wave through the air. It had motion sensors, meaning it could detect your movements. Nintendo's idea was to make gaming more physical and intuitive. Instead of just pressing buttons, you could swing the controller like a tennis racket, or point it like a magic wand. The Wii launched in late 2006, and it indeed sparked a revolution in living rooms everywhere. It came bundled with Wii Sports, a collection of simple sports games like bowling, tennis, golf, boxing, and baseball. Suddenly, people who never considered themselves gamers were picking up the Wii Remote and happily bowling strikes or hitting home runs in Wii Sports. Families hosted Wii bowling tournaments in their living rooms, and retirement homes even organized Wii Sports sessions for exercise. Wii Sports was so popular that it became the best-selling Nintendo game of all time, thanks in part to being bundled with the console and a cultural phenomenon in its own right. Nintendo's strategy under Satoru Iwata and legendary designer Shigeru Miyamoto was to expand the audience of gaming beyond the usual young male demographic. They called this the Blue Ocean strategy. Instead of competing directly with Sony's PlayStation 3 and Microsoft's Xbox 360 for the same hardcore gamers, the Red Ocean, Nintendo would sail into the Blue Ocean of new players. And it worked brilliantly. The Wii's motion controls were easy for anyone to try. Grandparents were playing bowling on Wii. Parents who grew up with Nintendo were coming back to games after years, and little kids found it instantly fun to swing and play without complex buttons. Besides Wii Sports, the Wii was bolstered by other great games. Anew, The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess launched alongside the Wii in 2006, allowing players to swing the remote like a sword in Link's Adventure. In 2007, Super Mario Galaxy took Mario into outer space in a dazzling 3D platformer that many considered one of Mario's finest outings. The Wii also became known for games that got people up and moving, such as Wii Fit 2008, which came with a balance board for exercise and yoga, turning fitness into a fun family activity at home. And party games like Mario Kart Wii and Wii Party ensured that when friends gathered, the Wii was often the centerpiece of entertainment. The success of the DS and Wii was enormous. The DS line, including later refined models like the DS Lite and DSi, went on to sell well over 150 million units globally, the highest of any handheld ever. The Wii sold over 100 million consoles worldwide, outpacing both the PS3 and Xbox 360 by a significant margin. Nintendo proved that innovation and a focus on fun could win the day, even without having the most cutting-edge graphics. By 2008 and 2009, Nintendo was on top of the gaming world again, and video games had become more inclusive and mainstream than ever, thanks in large part to the DS and Wii inviting everyone to play. Modern shifts: Nintendo 3DS and Wii U 2011 to 2016. After the Wii's tremendous success, Nintendo faced the challenge of following it up. In the early 2010s, the gaming landscape was evolving with the rise of smartphones and new expectations for online play. Nintendo's next moves would have mixed results. One would find its footing and thrive, while the other would struggle. First came the Nintendo 3DS in 2011. This was the successor to the DS in the handheld line. As the name suggests, the big new feature was the ability to display 3D visuals without requiring special glasses. On the 3DS's upper screen, games appeared in stereoscopic 3D, adding depth that made characters and worlds look more real. You could even adjust a slider to increase or decrease the 3D effect. It felt a bit like a magic trick, seeing a 3D image on a little screen in your hands. The 3DS launched with games like Pilot Wings Resort and Nintendogs Plus Cats, and not long after, a new Super Mario 3D Land and Mario Kart 7, which both made great use of the 3D capability. Initially, the 3DS had a slow start in sales, partly due to a relatively high price, and perhaps because some people weren't convinced they needed 3D gaming. Nintendo responded by reducing the price significantly a few months after launch and rewarding early adopters with some free classic game downloads, the Ambassador Program. After that, the 3DS steadily gained momentum. It helped that the game library grew strong with entries like Animal Crossing New Leaf, which became another relaxing favorite for many players. Fire Emblem Awakening, a critically acclaimed tactical role-playing game, and Pokémon X and Y, the first fully 3D mainline Pokémon adventures. The 3DS even experimented with augmented reality games and included built-in apps that encouraged walking and other activities. In the end, the Nintendo 3DS line, including later models like the new 3DS, sold over 70 million units. It kept the spirit of dedicated handheld gaming alive at a time when mobile phone games were becoming popular, proving there was still a big appetite for Nintendo's style of portable fun. Meanwhile, Nintendo was preparing a new home console, which would end up being one of its more difficult chapters. In 2012, Nintendo launched the Wii U, the successor to the Wii. The Wii U's concept was novel. It featured a controller called the gamepad, which had a built-in touchscreen. This meant you could play games on the TV and also see extra information or touch controls on the gamepad in your hands. In some games, you could even continue playing solely on the gamepad screen. Off-TV play, allowing someone else to use the TV while you kept gaming. It was an early foray into the idea of a hybrid or second screen experience. Despite these ideas, the Wii U struggled to gain popularity. Its marketing was confusing for some consumers. A number of people thought it was just an add-on for the Wii rather than a whole new console, and it lacked the steady stream of third-party games that its competitors enjoyed. While the Wii U had some excellent titles, Super Mario 3D World, Mario Kart 8, Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, and the ink-splattering new shooter, Splatoon, 2015, were all terrific games. The system just didn't catch on like the Wii did. The Wii U ended up selling only about 13 million units in total, making it Nintendo's least successful home console launch. By 2014-2015, there was real concern about Nintendo's future in the console business, given the Wii U's poor performance. During this time, Nintendo also made a move into mobile games on smartphones, something it had long been hesitant to do. In 2016, they released simple mobile titles like Miitomo and Super Mario Run, and partnered on Pokémon Go, an augmented reality game for smartphones that became a worldwide phenomenon. Even though Nintendo didn't develop it directly, it benefited from the explosion of Pokémon's popularity. These efforts helped keep Nintendo's brands in the public eye and drew new audiences to Nintendo characters. A poignant moment in Nintendo's history occurred in 2015. Satoru Iwata, Nintendo's beloved president, passed away that year after an illness. There was an outpouring of love from fans around the world who remembered Iwata not just as a corporate leader, but as a gamer at heart and a champion of fun. He was known for often saying, above all, video games are meant to be just one thing: fun. Fun for everyone. In the interim, Tatsumi Kimishima took over as president, and later in 2018, Shuntaro Furukawa would assume the role. These leadership changes came as Nintendo was gearing up for its next big idea, one that would combine the lessons of the Wii U and the long heritage of handheld gaming into a single system. A switch in time. Nintendo Switch and Beyond, 2017 to 2025. In March 2017, Nintendo released the console that would mark a major comeback and a new direction: the Nintendo Switch. The Switch was a unique hybrid console. It could function as a home console that you play on your TV, but you could also pick it up out of its dock and take it on the go as a portable handheld. Essentially, Nintendo combined their console and handheld experience into one device. The system looked like a tablet with two detachable controllers on the sides, called Joy-Con controllers. In the dock, it sent the video to the TV, and you could play from the couch. Out of the dock, it had its own built-in screen and worked like a powerful handheld. This concept resonated with many people. You no longer had to stop your game when you left the house. You could simply switch to handheld mode and continue playing anywhere. The Nintendo Switch, launched alongside one of the most acclaimed games in Nintendo's history, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This Zelda game presented an enormous open world for players to explore freely, and it exemplified the Switch experience. You could be adventuring in the vast kingdom of Hyrule on your TV, then simply lift the console from the dock and continue that same adventure on a road trip or curled up in bed. Breath of the Wild was widely praised for its beauty and sense of freedom, and it helped drive early Switch sales. Another hit came a few months later with Super Mario Odyssey 2017, a 3D Mario adventure that set Mario on a globe-trotting journey to all sorts of imaginative kingdoms. The Switch era also revived many multiplayer and family-friendly favorites. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe let friends and family race anywhere, anytime. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate 2018 brought together every character in the series' history for massive crossover battles. And Nintendo introduced new franchises like ARMS, a quirky boxing game with extendable arms, and continued others like Splatoon 2, the sequel to the Wii U's surprise hit, letting players enjoy colorful ink battles on the go. Importantly, the Switch benefited from robust support by other game developers and a thriving indie game scene. People could play not only Nintendo's titles, but also major third-party games like Minecraft, Fortnite, and Skyrim on the go. The convenience and versatility of the Switch made it immensely popular. By bringing their portable and console audiences together, Nintendo found great success. As of 2025, the Nintendo Switch has sold over 152 million units worldwide, putting it on the verge of becoming Nintendo's best-selling console ever. This success has put Nintendo back on very strong footing, especially after the lessons learned from the Wii U. During the Switch years, Nintendo also delivered some record-breaking games. Animal Crossing: New Horizons came out in 2020 on the Switch, and it arrived at a time when the world was facing a difficult pandemic. The game offered a peaceful island getaway, where players could build a home, go fishing, catch bugs, and socialize with adorable animal villagers at their own pace. It provided comfort and joy to millions during a tough period, and it became one of the fastest-selling and best-selling games on the Switch. In the realm of Pokémon, games like Pokémon Sword and Shield 2019 and Pokémon Legends Arceus 2022 kept trainers busy catching and battling creatures on the Switch, and new titles continue to arrive. Nintendo also expanded its reach beyond games. In 2021, the first Super Nintendo World theme park area opened in Japan, and later in 2023 in the US, allowing fans to literally step into the world of Mario with real-life attractions. And in 2023, the Super Mario Bros. Movie hit theaters and became a blockbuster, showing that Nintendo's characters could win hearts on the big screen as well. Yet at its core, Nintendo remained focused on interactive entertainment. One of Nintendo's core missions has been to create unique experiences that put smiles on people's faces around the world. With the Switch, you could certainly see that mission in action. Families gathered to play Just Dance or Ring Fit Adventure for fun workouts. Kids bonded over trading Pokémon or building together in Minecraft. and longtime fans enjoyed epic adventures like Metroid Dread and Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. The Switch truly offered something for everyone, continuing Nintendo's legacy of inclusive fun. By 2025, the Switch was entering its 8th year, and naturally, gamers wondered what would come next. Nintendo answered that question by announcing a new console, the Nintendo Switch 2, planned for release in 2025. This system is set to be the successor to the Switch, aiming to carry forward the hybrid concept with updated technology. Nintendo offered a first-look trailer showing the Switch 2 and confirmed that it will play its own exclusive games while also supporting most existing Switch games. Fans around the world are excited to see how Nintendo will once again innovate and surprise with this next generation. The story of Nintendo is clearly an ongoing one, with each new chapter bringing something unexpected and delightful. Conclusion. And so we come to the end of tonight's journey through time with Nintendo. It's amazing to reflect on how a small playing card company from 1889 grew into one of the most creative forces in entertainment. Through all the ups and downs, from handmade Hanafuda cards to the latest high-tech consoles, Nintendo has always sought to bring a bit of joy and fun into people's lives. They've introduced us to an Italian plumber who heroically jumps over turtles, a brave elf boy who travels through time to save a princess, and electric mice that fit in your pocket. Their consoles have transformed the way families and friends play together. Whether it was huddling around an NES to play Super Mario Bros. In 1985, swinging a Wii remote to bowl a strike in 2006, or gathering on the couch to race in Mario Kart on the Switch. Nintendo's story is one of innovation, perseverance, and the magic of play. Even in challenging times, the company found new ways to captivate our imaginations, turning setbacks like the video game crash or a disappointing console launch into opportunities to try bold new ideas. And through it all, they never forgot their core mission, to put smiles on faces. In fact, Nintendo has sold more than 5.5 billion video games and over 800 million hardware units globally in its history. Think of all those happy moments. The triumphant cheer when finishing a tough level, the laughter during a multiplayer match, the comfort of revisiting a favorite game world, all made possible by that creative spark kindled so long ago in Kyoto. Now, as you drift off to sleep, imagine the gentle coin ding of Mario collecting a coin, or the soothing whoosh of Link swinging his sword, or the calm rustle of Animal Crossing's virtual ocean waves. The tale of Nintendo is still being written, and who knows what new adventures and characters await just around the corner. One thing is certain, Nintendo will continue dreaming up unique entertainment to enchant players of all ages, staying true to its mission of creating fun experiences that put smiles on people's faces around the world. Thank you for listening to this bedtime story of Nintendo's history. May your dreams be filled with superstars and master swords, with Pikachus and Princess Peaches. Good night, and sleep tight with a heart full of nostalgia and a smile. The very kind of smile Nintendo has been inspiring for over a century. Sweet dreams.